My biggest challenge as a seamstress has to do with getting a perfectly finished waistband. This is the result I usually get whenever I try. As a matter of fact, for all my years of sewing, I never really got it right until today. All thanks to the Holy Spirit for this, because this thing frustrated me in the past. Like, I don't even bother using this method, I just run away from it. So if this is your experience, make sure you watch this video to the end. Now, before we get into it, I would like to point out here that from experience, sewing up a perfectly finished waistband requires 80% planning and prepping of your fabric, and only 20% actually doing the sewing. So make sure you don't skip any part of this video, because every little details I gave in this video is what will guarantee the results you get at the end. If you skip it, then you lose the whole essence of this video. Now, without further ado, let's just get into it. I'll be using this cardboard paper to illustrate, but you can draft your waistband directly on your fabric, okay? Now, let's determine the width of the band. So if you want your finished band to be 1.5 inches, you need to multiply this by 2, which gives 3. Next, you need to add 1/2 inch seam allowance. This is to connect the band to the waist of the skirt. So this means 3.5. Next, you need to add another 1/2 inch to finish up the waistband. So this gives 4 inches. Now here comes the very important step that you cannot ignore. This is the step that changed everything for me, okay? Now, instead of cutting 4 inches, you need to add an extra 1/8 of an inch for I will call it a sewing ease. So I'm going to go again. Say, for example, you want your finished band to be 1.5 inches. You have to times that 1.5 by 2, which gives 3 inches. You need to add a seam allowance to attach the waistband to the skirt, 1/2 inch, then another 1/2 inch to finish the band, which makes 4 inches. Then the extra step, which is the most important step, is to add another 1/8 of an inch to your total measurement. So whether you want your finished band to be 1 inch or 1 3/4 or 2 inches, this principle applies. Make sure you add that extra 1/8 of an inch. Now, whether you're cutting on a pattern paper or you're cutting directly on a fabric, you want to ensure that you have a straight edge. So all your edges should be on a 90-degree angle, meaning you want to have a perfect rectangle. So now from the edge, I'll start measuring the width, which is 4/1/8, and then square across. Now for the length of the band, I usually just go for my waist circumference plus 4 inches. I know that 4 inches sounds a lot, but I rather have excess to work with than to have less, okay? Now for the fabric, you need to give your fabric a good press to eliminate all creases before you go in with your interfacing. So I'm using a paper stay for this. You can use S-stay. Once this is done, you want to trim off the excess. And by the way, it is very important that you interface your fabric before you cut out the band pattern, because most times a fabric will expand once it is applied. So make sure you interface your fabric first before you cut out the band pattern. Next, I'm going to go in with my cardboard paper. I'm going to use this to trim off the edges because I want a perfect straight edge, okay? So this is one of the reasons I use this thick cardboard. And then I'll go ahead and take the measurement of my band width and trim off the excess. So this is what I have. Now we need to fold in both edge of the band, okay? So remember, we added 1/2 inch for seam allowance to attach the band to the skirt, and we added another 1/2 inch to finish off the band. So we're going to be folding this 1/2 inch and then give it a good press. So you want to take your time when doing this. If it means that you need to take that 1/2 inch measurement and then roll it on the fabric with pencil before folding, please do whatever it takes for you to get the accurate folding on the edge of the fabric, okay? So I repeat the same for the bottom edge of my band. Now for the next step, we're taught to fold the band equally, right? So this is one step you do not want to do. Rather, you remember that 1/8 of an inch we added to the band width? So you're going to fold the band in such a way that one edge of the band overlaps the other with 1/8 of an inch. So this is the step that makes a whole lot of difference. Okay, so I'm just going to come close so you can see what I mean. This is what you should have, that 1/8 overlap. Okay, you do not want to fold it equally like so. You don't want to do this. So make sure you fold it in such a way you have this 1/8 of an inch from one end to the other end. So take your time when you're doing this. Now we're going to take the edge of the band that is shorter and flip out the seam allowance. So this is the seam allowance will be attaching to the skirt waistline. So I'm going to position the waistband like so, and then I'll start pinning this on the skirt from one edge to the other edge. And here guys, I'm going to switch to a calico so that you can see this clearly. The good thing about ironing the seam allowance is that it creates a crease you can follow while you are sewing. Instead of bothering yourself and measuring 1/2 inch seam allowance just to make sure that you are accurate, the fact that you ironed your seam allowance first is going to help in, guiding you to sew the accurate seam allowance. And again, I lost some clips, so I'll be switching back to the Ankara to show you the next step. You want to turn that seam allowance upward toward the band, and you fold like so. And you see, even after folding, you still have that 1/8 of an inch overlap, right? So I've switched back to my skirt. Now for the end of the skirt, you want to fold your band like so to the wrong side, and then you just want to draw a straight line from the edge of the waistline of the skirt to the top of the band. Once you've done that, you want to add your seam allowance of 1/4 to 1/2 of an inch. So I added 1 centimeters as my seam allowance here. At this point, you want to trim off the excess, but always make sure you still have that 1/8 of an inch overlap. Okay, now you want to take this to your sewing machine and sew. So after sewing, this is what we have. Now we're going to flip the seam allowance like so, and then flip the band to the right side. You also want to repeat the same thing for the other end. Even if you want a button extension, you are still going to repeat the same process. Now pay close attention. So this is the right part of the skirt. Now we're going to pin right in the middle of the seam, okay? But you want to pin in such a way that the pin catches 1/8 of an inch on the wrong side of the band, okay? I would advise that if you don't have pins that are very thin, you should baste this. Do a basting stitch instead of using a pin, because one disadvantage of using a pin, it could be on your way when you are sewing. But when you baste it, that's, remove that obstacle. Pinning is quicker, but basting takes time, okay? So now pay close attention. You want to insert your pin right in the middle of the seam, and then make sure it catches the edge of the band on the wrong side, and then pin. So I'll go ahead to do this until I get to the very end. On the right side of the skirt, you want to drop your needle right in the middle of the seam and do a stitch in the ditch. Now, because you have pinned this, it's going to help to make sure that you are catching 1/8 of an inch on the wrong side of the band. And another thing, when you are sewing, make sure you do not drag your skirt. You just want it to glide through smoothly, okay? I'm going to take off the pin and give this a good press, then we'll see what we have. the joy I felt after seeing the end result of this band, like I was so overjoyed. Feel free to share this video because you do not know who you'll be saving from anxiety and stress, okay? For the whites, that is a calico, I'm going to rate myself like 95%, yes. And for the Ankara skirt, I'm going to rate myself 90%. I would like to hear on the comment section what you rate my performance. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you subscribe to this channel before you leave. I remain my humble self, Priscilla Simeon Travis. I will see you on my next one. Till then, have a lovely day. Bye.